I mean, the novelty, I think, of everything wears off, right? You get a new car and, okay, no one eats in here. And 2 weeks later, there's French fries on the seat. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
like, the whole novelty of it all, man, it wears off, which is why happiness is just a complete present state of being. And that's just what it is.
Terrence Cunningham is a singer, musician, and author. You might recognize him from NBC's The Voice.
It's still one of the greatest moments of my life. People at the apex of their careers, so to speak, say in so many ways solidify what you only dream to be true about yourself.
On this episode of The Ground Up Show, we talk about how to turn down the noise to avoid distractions and negative influences, creating a lifelong career as an artist, and how to be a fearless creator. If you have been enjoying these conversations, if you've been enjoying The Ground Up Show, then I love to have your support. Head over to iTunes, leave a quick review or a rating. Let me know what you like about the show. If you don't like the show, then just don't listen. Don't be mean and post about it online. That would be rude. Or, of course, you can share your favorite podcast episode with a friend, another creative person that's on a similar journey to yourself. All right, let's get to the podcast. This is Terrence. You're listening to The Ground Up Show, a podcast that inspires creatives to make meaningful content and pursue their passions. My name's Matt Diavella, and I'm a filmmaker best known for the Netflix documentary Minimalism. And I'm sitting down with creators to talk about their process, the lessons they've learned, and how to make an impact.
The older I get, the more I listen to the weather station on the radio versus, music.
You listen to the weather station.
Yeah.
It's like my dad used to watch the Weather Channel, and I'm like, what are you watching?
Yeah, it's the news and the updates about what's going on, and I just love it. And it's so funny. I caught myself because I'll be 37 a month from tomorrow, and I caught myself a few years ago preferring that over listening to hip hop or soul or rock. I just want to listen to people talk. And I would drive and I was like, oh, that's interesting. And then I caught myself. I said, I think I put a post up about it. I said, I've reached a point in my life where I prefer news radio. And all these people started laughing. So
right. I do remember that growing up, just thinking like, why is my dad listening to AM radio? Like talk shows were like a virus. Like why would you ever listen to that? Right. And then I don't know. Are we getting boring, or is it maybe we have more patience than we used to?
You know what, man? I think it's all about the mood, and I think it's something really kind of classic about it, where you can kind of tune down the noise and listen to what matters, I guess. You know what I mean? And I think even getting older, being in your late 30s, has a certain thing about it that I'm really beginning to enjoy, because when you're this age, you begin to settle into who you are, and you're more comfortable with who you are. And I think listening to talk radio is kind of that thing. I just listen to different opinions and I compare those and contrast them with my own. And I think it's a great thing, man. I embrace becoming older and being more comfortable with who I am and who I believe myself to be.
Yeah, I think in a way, especially when we're younger, a lot of times we want to look for distractions because there's a lot of questions that are unanswered. Yeah. And facing them is probably the most challenging thing to do. I know even my younger siblings are at a point now where they're like, well, what do I want to do with my life? Like high school, college, like these are huge moments in people's lives. Yeah. And if you don't know who you are, you get a little bit antsy sitting in one place.
Yeah. And I think the thing about getting older is the comfortability. I think when you have a better sense of who you are, I think the world kind of opens up, because you really care less about what other people think you should do and say, well, this is what I think I should do. And it's such a luxury to not have to sift and look through all these things, that people think you should do, and say, well, I think this is cool. And I think life becomes so much easier, because you're right. There's a lot of pivotal moments, through adolescence, you really have an idea of what you may want to become. But I think at this certain age of your life, you make some real decisions and say, well, this is all right. This is what I'll do.
Right. Like you have to just start dropping everything.
Yeah.
There's definitely that fear of missing out early on where you feel like you have to do and try everything.
Yeah.
And that can be a stressful way to live.
Yeah, it could be. And I think, being more settled in the quiet. I think there's something that says those who know don't speak because they don't find it necessary to speak unnecessarily. And you're right, the fear of missing out. But now it's like, oh, you guys go ahead. I'll stay in. I'll be here. And I don't know why the fear of missing out. Maybe it has to do with, I don't know, insecurity, or maybe it's defining when you go out and people affirm who you are when you go to clubs or go to bars or whatever. But I think, when you're just settled in who you are, man, it's such a relaxing thing.
Mm-hmm.
I'd rather just stay home, listen to music or watch TV, and as, compared to before, I just had to be out somewhere doing something. But now it's like, I'm good.
And it's not guaranteed that that's going to be a journey that you're going to take as well, because there definitely are those people that latch on. Mm-hmm. That advice people used to always say is like, college are the best years of your life. Teachers would tell me that in high school. College is the best years of your life. That used to terrify me. I'm like, really? So you're just saying I just have to really pack all my life in the next 4 years?
Yeah.
Thank God it wasn't true. But I mean,
Right.
it can be if that's the only time when you get to like experiment and try different things, and then all of a sudden you settle for a salary at the end of it.
Right. And I think it may be considered the best years of your life because this is your first time doing something fully on your own accord. You don't have your parents or your guardians or family to tell you what to do. This is fully on you. So I think it's a testing ground of your sustainability and your determination to do things. So maybe that's what it means. And there's such a myriad of things that you can try and test out. And maybe that's why it's considered the best years of your life, because this is your first time being, quote, an adult. And so this is all that's available. And you have to, like you said, you have a lot of things from which to draw. And it's up to you what you choose. So I think the choosing is what makes it the interesting thing.
Right. It's in contrast to the first 18 years of your life,
right,
when you really don't have much control.
Right.
If you have good parents, right? If they're doing their job.
If they're doing the right thing. Yeah.
And then you get to a point where you're like, all right, now it's your turn. It's your turn to start making some decisions and
Right.
figuring out where you want to go. And I think, part of that is just being open to new experiences and open to changing your mind if something's not working out.
Right.
Because a lot of times we get stubborn, and we, especially like if you make a decision at 18, all right, I'm going to, go to college and then go to med school and then go on this route, it becomes more and more difficult to step off that train once it's in motion.
Yeah, absolutely. And even in contrast to that, going the artist route, which is the route that I chose, there's no guarantee at all. There's no true steady course of action. You kind of take it as it comes. Sometimes you get called for the gig, sometimes you don't. Sometimes you make a lot of money, sometimes you make no money. So it's really an ebb and flow, and it takes a lot of determination and a lot of, dedication to take on an endeavor that's so not guaranteed. Because even artists that are famous now, once upon a time, no one knew who they were. But I think it was that determination that kept them really, really moving forward. And like you said, stepping off of the path that's in some ways, there's a course for you, but taking the course less traveled, being an artist, is really, really insane, man. It can be really difficult at times.
And your path is a lot different than I would say a lot of artists, mm-hmm. where a lot of artists can go through life and I guess focus strictly on their art, and that's it, right?
Yes.
Where there's definitely a privilege to that, where if mm-hmm. you can go through, like I did, through high school and college and pay, like, use student loans and mm-hmm. then dabble in videography and filmmaking and not have real responsibilities right. up until even now. Like I don't even have like legit responsibilities. Like I have to take care of myself. Of course, like I take on additional responsibilities where I want to help family, friends, and the loved ones, but I don't have somebody who's dependent upon me.
Right.
And that's, your circumstance in your life story. There's a lot of extra challenges
Yes.
that were involved. Talk a little bit about that moment when you're 16 years old when everything changed.
When I was 16, my daughter was born. And, at that time in your life, as we were talking about before, those are really some of the most definitive years, I believe, because you're firstly becoming really aware of who you are and aware of life's possibility. But for me, those defining moments were steeped in compassion, because now here's this person that I've never met that I instantly had fallen in love with. And I felt immediately that it was my responsibility to protect her, to keep her from harm and things like that. So in my teenage years, they were really circled and encompassed around her. And what I love about that, going back to your adolescence being the years that pretty much set the course for your life. So now, at that time of being completely present in that moment and in those moments, those present moments taught me about compassion and empathy and patience. So now that's something that I've adopted and used to this very day, some 20 years later, because that's all I knew. She was all I knew. All I knew was to be a protector. All I knew was to be a provider and to be patient and to be loving, like you and I were speaking before off camera, that most men are taught not to do. They're taught to get over it and shake it off and dust yourself off and don't cry and don't be sad, which is ridiculous, because your children really couldn't care less about your machismo. They just, Daddy, I'm hungry, period. I don't care about whether you're tired. I don't care about, the date that you may have tonight. All I know is that I'm hungry and you need to do something about it. And so, and especially keeping with and dealing with a young girl, you have no choice, because there's a certain language that you have to use. There's a certain approach that you have to have with a little girl that you can't necessarily have with a boy, because with the girl, you have to speak in a certain tone, because you say the wrong thing, immediately their feelings are hurt and then you feel like the worst person alive. So in addition to that, man, to get back to your question, I've always known that music was my path. And I truly believe that whatever your calling is, as long as your intention is sound, you can put that call on hold temporarily, especially when you know something that's in so many ways more important than that. So I was willing to sacrifice not singing as much and not playing or touring as much, because this was now my responsibility, which is why I waited until she got out of high school to fully pursue music full time.
Did you feel like you had to grow up quick? Like, you hear a lot of people that say that when, if something like that happens at 16, 17 years old, before you're prepared to handle with it. Did you feel like that? Like, you're like, oh, I got to adult real hard right now.
Oh, no. Yeah. I mean, 100% in that moment. And I was in the delivery room, man. And it's like that very moment, my life changed. And I haven't felt, I think that's the definition of what overjoyed means, because you become so overwhelmed, but you don't understand why. And it's so, I just cried, but I didn't understand why, because I've never felt that much happiness ever in my life. And to experience that at 16, everything is on 10,000 at 16. Like, you kiss a girl and you go out on a date and you think you're on top of the world. So to experience something like that, I had to immediately, something happened to where I knew I had to get her Infamil, and I had to get her Pampers, I had to get her clothes, I had to take her everywhere with me, and I had to do all these things. So yeah, it makes you grow up very, very fast, because you're there and the hospital's like, well, here you all go. And we just have to take her home now. And so it completely changes your life. And I had to mature very, very quickly. And I think it's, even to this day, it still affects me.
I think in a lot of ways there's so much good in that, in terms of your like artistic career as well, because a lot of times as an artist, you can get so absorbed in it that you neglect family, you neglect friends,
right? And
you're just sitting in your own bubble and you're only working on your art and you don't care about what's happening in the world around you. And people are like, hey, you didn't show up for dinner today,
Right.
So it's in a lot of ways, some people have to learn that the hard way. They have to circle back and then be like, you know what? I need to focus on, like we were talking even before the podcast, my personal well-being, my personal life, what I'm eating, like, am I living a healthy life? Because success and happiness aren't the same thing. You know, a lot of people think, oh, I get success in this field, therefore I will be happy. But when does that ever happen in the real world? You look at people, you know, look at any successful artist or entertainer, and you can, pick up so many of them that aren't happy, and they'll tell you that.
Yeah. And you're right. So for me, it was the opposite. I chose to take on the responsibility head on. And I still performed here and there, but mostly it was about her. It was about being there. And that's something that I'd never experienced before. I didn't know what it was to just love something so much that it consumes you. So all I wanted to do was to be around her and spend time with her. And hats off to her mom, who still allowed me to, when I had to travel, when I had to tour, it was never an issue. Her mom was completely compassionate and understanding that I was working on something, and she believed in me so much so that she really took the majority of the weight of our co-parenting team that we still are, obviously. And so for me, man, it was never a thing of I got to do this, I got to do that, because you're right, happiness and success is not the same thing. I think anything, when your happiness is contingent upon something, you never will be, because happiness is a state of mind. Because I've heard people say, well, when I get this, I'll be happy. No, it never happens like that, because it's no amount of success or amount of money that you could ever acquire that can outweigh or compare to happiness. It's just not a thing. It's not. And we hear these stories, rags to riches stories, and at the end of the day, they're like, it's fine. I have these, cars. I mean, the novelty, I think, of everything wears off, right? You get a new car, and okay, no one eats in here. And 2 weeks later, there's French fries under the seat. You know what I mean? So, like the whole novelty of it all, man, it wears off, which is why happiness is just a complete present state of being, and that's just what it is. And I went all that way to say that, I chose to stay around with her, and I knew that my time would come, because my intention was to be a good parent, and I think the reward for that is to now be able to do what I'm doing now.
There's certainly, even I'm sure now you experience it, and it's one of those things you have to kind of place in check, but I'm sure at that time as well, an anxiousness and an impatience. You seem like a really patient person. Like I definitely, and it's a daily practice for me to remain patient. Because like you said, we're always like, oh, I want to get there. I want to get to that place. I want to like get this many followers or have this many downloads. And you just have to sit back and be like, this is the fun part. You're going to look back at this part and be like, yo, that was the struggle. That was when shit was really hard.
Right.
But it was when the times were uncertain. And that's when it's fun. Like when you have everything handed to you, if somebody gave you an unlimited budget to do whatever you wanted, it's just not as exciting or as fun.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I think it's about the journey always. And I think that was a whole issue with Buddha. He had everything in his life handed to him, and his father was very keen on keeping him away from seeing any sort of suffering. So he had no clue of what suffering was until I think one day he saw a quote peasant guy and looked at him and was like, "What in the world is this? Like, you're poor? What does poor mean?" And I think that's when he decided that, I've been shielded from all of these different parts of life, so I'm going to now find what true enlightenment and happiness is, and it's not in things, because clearly I've had that and it hasn't been the best thing. So it's really about the journey of it all. And there's a certain anxiousness, as you and I were talking earlier, especially living in this city, because everyone is seemingly doing something. And you can get caught up in, well, I should be working on this and I should be working on that. And a lot of times we should be working on ourselves. That's what's paramount. Because once you get it and you're still kind of manic, you'll squander it, And you're right. You want to get a certain amount of followers. I remember when I first got 10,000 followers. I said, oh, that's amazing. then the moment was gone, you know? And the more that you get, you check and you check and you check. But at the end of the day, it's just numbers. You know what I mean? And again, it all circles back to what is your bliss, what makes you happy. That's the only thing that would ever matter in any aspect of life.
Yeah, I just did a video on this too, because like you were talking about, we just get used to things. And the video was about how, in my own personal experience, you kind of have like a measure of like how many likes on an Instagram photo feels good or is a successful post. Like when you first start out, it's like 20 likes. You're like, oh sweet, I got 20 likes. And then you upload like
Crushing
a shitty
it.
photo and there's 2 likes. And you're like,
It destroys you.
yeah, you're like, what?
It destroys you, man. And it'll even make you weigh the validity of what you've said. Now, if I came up with something thought-provoking, and like you said earlier, we have a tendency to surprise ourselves, then I post it, not even considering how funny these algorithms can be. And maybe if you post at a certain time of day, only 10% of your followers see it. And so you get 20 likes, and you're like, man, maybe that wasn't smart. And that's absolutely insane. But that is the world that we now live in. I learned that the hard way, man. And we'll get to this later, but when my video got on YouTube, and from not being known at all to being known by millions of people, going through those comments, bro, Jesus Christ. Like, people can be really, and so the thing that we have a tendency to live our lives contingent on what a stranger says, or how a stranger doesn't double click a picture with their thumb, is absolutely insane, man. But that's where we are.
Yeah, it's a strange world, because this 15, 20 years ago, this would never happen. Right. You know, it would be, maybe people would have conversations in private, but nobody's ever talking shit to your face. If any of those people that left one of those shitty comments was in this room, I guarantee, like,
there's no way.
Nobody would say anything.
There's no way.
But that's the world we live in now, and that's one of the challenging things as a creator, especially as when your voice gets heard.
Yeah.
You will see more and more of these people, and like, every once in a while I see it. I think one of the good things about, like, that was like a viral video. It was this crazy moment, and you have a lot of people that don't know you yet.
Yeah.
Once you have, you like build an audience yourself. And what I found on my YouTube channel is that's most of the people that I see are people that know me, that have seen me before. And like, that's what you want to build.
Yeah.
And that's when you feel like your voice isn't you're not trying to hold yourself back. Right. Like, oh, how are they going to interpret this? Oh, they're going to interpret it, and understand where I'm coming from, because they've seen like 10, 15, 20 previous videos that I've made.
Right.
But that still said, I think then there's also a level where you look at some people like, say, Joe Rogan. I mean, he gets the best and the worst of both worlds. Yeah. Right? Where like eventually, if your audience is so big, people will come out and hate as well. But that's the thing you got to deal with as a creator.
Yeah, and I think, if anything, man, I think it's a dualistic ideal. I think either you can use that and it makes you more fearless to know that if we can get over the fact that everyone may not like something, there's nothing that you won't be able to do. So it's either that aspect of it, where people may hate it and I don't care, or it's going to consume you. Those are really your only two options. Because if you live your life, especially being creators, because we live our life in a lot of ways contingent upon the affirmations of other people. Because if no one buys our product, how do we live? And it doesn't mean that it's good or bad, but we live solely off of what other people think of what we do, which is a hard thing with music and film and art and, all those aspects. If other people don't like it, we're not working in an office for someone else that's like, well, yeah, you did a good job, here's your check. But we put our lives out for the public to judge. And we're on Billboard and they're like, or they love it. And so,
right. Yeah, you spend like 3 years working on an album.
And you're like ta-da. And they're like,
Yeah, it's all right.
And so, I mean, what do you do with that? So again, I think the idea is to know within yourself that it's good, that you put in the work. And I think us as creators, who are some of the most insecure, if not the most insecure people alive, because we have to be so transparent, man. And it's a luxury, because we get to exhaust all that we are, versus someone that just works in an office and it's just like, well, this is what I have to do, this thing. This was the task given to me. But for us, our task is to share our very essence with other people for it to be judged whether good or bad.
Probably the heart of what I wanted to get out of this conversation is like, how do we know what art to create, what we truly want to say versus how people are reacting and making money as an artist?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people struggle with that because it's very easy to give that advice and say, screw what people say, create what you want to create, put it out in the world. And I do think there's a large part of that that's true, but then there's also the part where it's like, hey, you know, I gotta pay the bills, I need to make a living doing this first, then we can get crazy. And you know what I mean? How do you find that balance of like creating art and making money?
Well, I firmly believe, man, that if your intention is sound, I think there's a law of Dharma that says if your intention is sound, then things will come to your aid. I think artists that live unapologetically are the most successful. When you consider, Basquiat, that type of art and things, actually it was a success, that really began to bother him because this is how do I make $1 million painting? I don't know how to do that. I can paint, obviously this stuff is amazing, but the pressure of, what is the word I want to, satisfying the masses, I think is what's consuming. Because I think if you're not careful, you tend to pander. And I think once you begin to pander, it starts to affect the quality of your work. Well, if I have to do this because this is what people may like, it all depends on the audience, in my understanding. I think if you have the core following that followed you from the beginning when you lived uncompromisingly, I think that is the best type of art to do. So if you're not careful, you'll make stuff just because, and I think the work will start to suffer if you do that.
Do you think that there is an element to selling out, which it comes to a point where it negatively impacts your career, where all you're doing is focusing on, I'm gonna create that album because that's gonna sell a lot of records?
Yeah, I think the operative word there, man, is career versus kind of your self-worth. I mean, it may boost your career, but what is it doing for you? At what cost? And so I think we have to, I think your work will begin to suffer if you begin to compromise because it's not what you want to do. You're doing what someone else wants you to do. You're the artist, not the listener. We're the ones, I think, with the power. We're the ones with, we give voice to the voiceless because we dare do something that I think all people could do if they really settled down. I think everyone's artistic. I think it was Ken Robinson that said, it's not an issue of if you're artistic, it's an issue of how. Well, it's not a matter of if you're artistic, it's a matter of how you're artistic. I think everyone has something within them. There was always that little kid that dreamed of doing something, but due to, like you said, circumstances or due to money or out of some sense of necessity, well, I'll just go this way instead. So I think if you're not careful, your work will begin to suffer.
You decide to raise your daughter. You did a little bit of work on your artistry, like on the side. You're still playing music and you're still like working on the craft, but you're not able to make a full-time living off of it, or you are?
Well, no, actually, I played I've played music in the church for about 20 years. And so that was always one aspect. I've always lived solely on music. I've never really had a regular job. It's always been playing for a church or playing for an artist or playing for a play or on tour or something like that. But to pursue it as a solo artist, not fully, no. But I always actually found quite a bit of success just playing the piano and the organ for different occasions. And I've done that since I was about 13, 14. So music really is all that I've ever known. So now that she is out of high school, I decided to move here to Los Angeles to really pursue it for me, not for anyone else, not to build anyone else's platform, but to build my own.
Which is good because then you were able to obviously continue to work on the skills that were going to be necessary at this point.
Yeah.
But then it's so challenging. There must be so much doubt. I remember, the different transitional points in my career and life when I'm making these big jumps where you're kind of saying, all right, everything I did in the past, while it's going to support me into the future, I have to throw it all out to start completely over.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what you did when you came to LA, right?
Mm-hmm. I really kind of did away with all of those things. But the blessing in all of those things is what it was all preparatory for what I'm doing now, because I was still playing weekly the piano, and every time I sit down and play, it's like I'm practicing, it's like I'm rehearsing, or I sang, or I was a music director for a church or for a choir. So it was always music. So all of those things, in my mind, I've just made majesty of the means. So I did all of those things, and now I'm here, and I feel like I'm more prepared. But again, to your question, yeah, it's hard to, one, not know if the money is guaranteed. And being here in a city where I don't really know anyone, and I'm trying to make something of myself, it is challenging. But again, I'm so determined to make it happen that I think that's what carries me, and that's what motivates me to pursue to the next level.
Does that help you get through the doubt, just knowing that there's no other option, there's no giving up, there's no turning back?
And that's the thing. That is the motivator, is that I don't have an option in it. This is what I have to do. So I can either sulk or I can suck it up, because I'm not going to work in data entry, I'm not going to do that. So music is it. And I have a daughter to support, and I have a legacy to uphold, and I have a legacy indeed to establish. So, the temporary emotion of I'm tired, I don't feel like it today, I said, okay, I'll give you a day, but ultimately I'm living solely on the back of my own effort. And so it's up to me. It's not up to anyone else. It's up to me to be ready. It's up to me to stay sharp. It's up to me to stay relevant. It's up to me to practice piano and practice singing and to eat well so I can tour around the world and not, become consumed with certain things and, with drugs or just a crazy lifestyle. So it's my job and endeavor to stay centered and to stay calm and to stay present so I can really take this thing on rather it consume me.
Were there any wins early on coming to LA that were like, oh, okay, it's feeling like I'm heading in the right direction?
Yeah. Well, the first win was I moved here with no plan. I came out here for my birthday about 3 or 4 years ago, and I decided that I wanted to move here. And I called a friend of mine. I said, hey, I'm thinking about relocating to LA. And her first thing was, oh, well, I'm going to be out of town for 2 months, stay at my apartment that very day. And so I had a place to live immediately, about a month later. And then when I got here, within the first week, I got invited to go on tour with Nate Roos from Fun. I just happened to be at a friend's house, and she had a piano, and I'm sitting down there and I'm playing, and she's like, oh, you can really play. And I was like, well, yeah. I mean, this is, this is what I do. And she said, oh, well, there's some tour dates with Nate Roos. Now, this was before, I didn't know Nate Roos by his name. I knew him from the guy from Fun. And she said, yeah, well, there's some tour dates, and we want to get you involved. And being in the music industry, man, I can tell you, and I'm sure that you know, that there's a lot of industry talk. Oh, we're going to get you involved. And you're like, oh, okay. But after a while, you're like, all right, I'll believe it when I see it.
Until I see that check. I didn't get the job.
Yeah. And so that next week, I got an email from his manager saying, hey, we want to do some spot dates with us on the tour. And I didn't have to audition. He said, normally we have people audition, but I've heard whoever recommended you spoke very highly of you, and I trust her opinion. So are you interested in playing? And that was my first LA story, which may not be a lot of people's story, but mine was a win within the first week. And from that, I've gotten other opportunities, and that was my first win.
Have you seen a little bit of a snowball where if you look back at, say, that experience or early ones on, that kind of like it was the first domino that gave you some momentum and opened up to different jobs?
Yeah, of course. It was that show, and then I've worked with other people in the band on other projects, on other records, and Nate even personally recommended me for other gigs, and so he's been really kind of sweet about that. And other gigs, and I was actually asked to tour another date with them as well. So now I'm on the payroll with them. So if they need someone to fill in, they'll give me a call. And that was my first time playing for a major artist. So for me, reaffirmed some things that I had about my ability, and so it's been great ever since. Yeah.
Right. Like, so you're crazy talented, but apart from that, what do you think it was that got you more jobs? Right. Like, I don't think people recommend artists just based upon skill and raw talent, right? There's something else there, like personal traits and punctuality, whatever it is. Like, what do you think helped you to continue to get recommended?
I think it was that too, because what I've learned about being in LA is if you're good and you're reliable and you're on time and you don't have a huge ego, you'll work forever. And honestly, sometimes it is based on purely on talent. If you're good and we can depend on you and you're dependable and you're not a diva in any sense of the word, because there's a lot of egos, obviously, in Los Angeles, many of them unwarranted. But that kind of pushed me to do other things. And within a year or so of that, because of a video that I posted online, I got a call to be on The Voice on NBC.
So they called you after watching a video that you posted. Was it just a performance in the bedroom type deal? Yeah,
it was just me. Honestly, I don't know which video it was because I didn't post many before then. It was something on Facebook. I was probably sitting at the piano, just kind of noodling around and singing. And one of the guys from casting sent me a DM and said, "Hey, I work on casting from The Voice, and we want to get you involved."
Did you have like a Facebook audience? Like how many people saw that video, or like one of these early videos that you were posting?
Yeah, I had a couple thousand followers with friends on Facebook, and I don't really know how many people saw the video because honestly, I would put up videos of me playing, but I very rarely put up a video of me singing, and evidently he saw it and maybe had a couple hundred views, maybe, possibly, even if that many. But I guess the right person saw it, and it's changed my life to where I am now.
Right. That's what I tell people all the time, because a lot of people just get caught up on like, oh, this video only got 100 views, 200 views. It's like, were they the right views?
Right.
All you need is one person to see it.
All you need is one person to see it. And yeah, he saw it, and we talked, and fast forward to last year, I got the chance to be on The Voice.
What's your feeling heading there? Did it feel like this is going to be a big moment for me, or you don't know? Because I don't know. Are there a certain amount of people that just get cut from the final edit?
Yeah. Now there's the cattle call aspect of that show, where people just show up in different cities and they stand in line and wait. And I think some 40,000 people across the country auditioned for the show. And there's also people that the show reaches out to personally. I think they kind of scour social media and YouTube to try to find new aspiring artists. And so going in, man, I really had no clue. I didn't know really what to expect. Honestly, I'd never really seen the show before. I'd heard of it. I knew it was a show where they had the chairs. That's pretty much all I knew about it.
The chairs that spin when you push a button.
Yeah, they're going to hate me for saying that, but I had never really watched it. So I really didn't know what to expect. I went in and I auditioned, and the audition was great. And they let me play the piano and sing, and I did it, and they held me back to do some sort of an interview, and then they had to go back again, I think 2 or 3 weeks later, to audition for the executive producers of the show, and aced that one too. And
okay, so this is before the actual the primary audition in front of the judges.
Yeah. So I did that, and I made it onto the show, and really the beginning of the show is really just about getting someone to turn the chair. So you work on your music and you do things like that. But the pivotal moment is to get someone to turn their chair. So
Which, maybe like give for people who haven't seen the show, what that actually means.
Yeah, so basically the show is it has 4 celebrity coaches or judges. In this instance, it was Blake Shelton, Adam Levine, Alicia Keys, and Kelly Clarkson. And so the way the show is set up is that you go up and sing, but they can't see you, but they can hear you, which is really great because their decision isn't based on anything other than your voice, which is why the show is called The Voice, obviously. And so you go up there and you have about 90 seconds. You sing a verse and a chorus, maybe verse, bridge, chorus. And if they enjoy what they hear, they'll spin their chair, they'll press a button and spin their chair around, and they become your coach, per se. And that's really what the show's based on. And then after that, there's rounds of the show that you go through, and then they pick a winner at the end. And so when I went up, I sang My Girl by The Temptations, but I did my own interpretation of it. I sang it really slowly. And the best part of getting the show with the blind auditions is to get all 4 people to turn. And they all turned for me within 30 seconds, which I think broke a record on the show. And so yeah, that was a big moment. And out of, I think they went from 40,000 people cut down to 102, and out of those people, only 5 people got all 4 chairs, and I was one of those. Wow. I think I was the last one.
Are you when was it Kelly Clarkson was the last person to turn, or whoever it was? Well, it doesn't matter. Don't want to shit on them. But the last person turns. Is that like, are you just fired up inside as you're singing this song? Or are you
you know what's interesting about that, man, is that I didn't know that they had all turned. I was singing the song, and I think when I got to the word, I've got sunshine on a cloudy day, that's when Adam turned. And I didn't know that he turned because I was singing the song, and all of a sudden, all these people started screaming. And I said, "Oh man, I'm killing it!" But no, it was he turned. That's why they were screaming, because I was singing. I'm looking down,
right,
and he was to my left, out of my periphery, and I saw his name light up on the floor, and I said, "Oh my God, I've made it on the show." And that's pretty much what you want to do, is make it. And then as I'm singing, I hear people just screaming and screaming. Then when I looked up, all 4 of them were turned around. And I thought they were turned around in that moment because the song was over. I said, "Oh, Adam turned. I did a good job." But no, they had all turned because they all wanted to coach me. So that was a huge, once I realized that that's what happened, and I knew, like, my parents were there. And it's still one of the greatest moments of my life because it affirms something that doesn't necessarily need to be affirmed, but it still feels good to know that people at the apex of their careers, so to speak, say in so many ways solidify what you only dream to be true about yourself. It's a great moment. It's
got to mean so much. And then it's not only that, but then I guess subsequently what happened after that, just with their overall reactions, like the judges were blown away.
Yes.
And talking about this as like a moment that, probably has never happened on the show before.
Yeah.
And then after that, the video goes up and it just goes bonkers from that point.
Yeah. Man, what the things that they had to say, it's in so many ways, it's interesting when people say, "Were you happy?" And I don't know that happiness was sufficient, because for someone to congratulate you brings on a certain sense of uncomfortability. They're speaking so well of you and you respect them so highly. It's terrifying. It's like blissfully terrifying that these people that you admire so much and have admired for years are saying, "You don't need us, we need you." And you don't need this show. And we're surprised. And Adam said in so many words, "Why are you even here?" Because this show isn't sufficient for the level of talent that you have. And Alicia saying that if I've ever done anything right in my life, it was to come here only to meet you. And Kelly said, this is what she said.
It's insane.
And this was Kelly's first year being on the show. And she said, "I'm new here." And she said, "Whether you pick me or not, I want to record music with you." And Blake said that, "I think that was the greatest thing we've ever heard at any level of this show." And this is the 14th season of the show. and that was the best that we've heard in all 14 seasons. And I tend to live life late. Jamie Cullum said, when I look back on my ordinary life, I see so much magic, though I missed it at the time. And so when you're there, you're just taking it all in. You're like, oh, it's such a high. And now, that was in October. And now, I'm like, Alicia Keys did really say that. And now,
That was the thing.
it's about to be June. And it's just hitting me now from 6 months ago, the level of what that meant, not only to them, but what it meant to America and what it meant to me. And that very next day, after it aired, this is a thing about, in so many ways, being a nobody to being somebody in 90 seconds. That video was the number 2 trending video on all of YouTube. And it's just not in this certain genre of music, of the entire website, of millions, arguably, videos posted. And I remember someone told me that, but I had no clue what that meant. They said, you're number 2 trending. Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's pretty much on the internet. Like, if it's on YouTube, like if it's number 2 trending on YouTube.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
That is the internet.
It was so hard even to grasp because I just couldn't believe it. And I said, oh, and people are like, are you crazy? Do you realize what this means? Mm-hmm. And I'm just getting it now that the video was so popular. I think number 1 was something like Winnie the Pooh, but who beats Winnie the Pooh?
Can't beat Winnie the Pooh.
I mean, come on.
Maybe there's a collab there somewhere.
So, and it remained there. It remained in the top 10 or top 100 for about a week or or 2. And it got 1 million views in less than 24 hours. And again, when we were talking about, the numbers, you see it and it's just so unbelievable to go from 0 to 100 in a day is really, it's so foreign that you don't know how to react to it. And you just have to adjust to now being out, and everywhere you go, someone knows who you are. And someone says, hey, can I take a picture with you? And it's like my career wasn't really on the ascent. My career jumped from, a lower place to almost the top of YouTube in a day. And it's to this day, man, to this moment, it's still something that's really just kind of surreal and kind of unbelievable.
How did you not let that get to your ego? Because it's very clear with how you're reacting to it. It's nothing but appreciation and kind of awe and oh shit, that happened. Mm-hmm. Like that for real happened. How did you not let it get to your head?
Well, you know what, man, I don't think I have much of an ego, period. I don't think I have one. I mean, everyone wants to, in some ways, be known and be appreciated, but it happens so quickly. It's kind of like you win the lotto. What's the first thing you buy? You don't know. People say, I'm going to get this, I'm going to get that, until you have that check in your hand. And so it was, maybe because it was so foreign to me that I didn't know how to react to it. And if anything, it makes you sort of uncomfortable, because there's a saying that says that fame is a sarcophagus and everyone is just kind of looking in on what's happening. And so really it kind of is a little bit uncomfortable to walk around now and people kind of whisper, like, oh yeah, I think that's him. I think that's that guy over there. That's the guy with the thing on his head. That's the guy with the hair. Like whenever I see people and they talk amongst themselves and they do this, they're talking about me.
Oh goodness.
It's, I think that's that guy. And they'll go on their phones and, yeah,
that's the guy.
That's him. And then they'll kind of saunter over and say, hey, oh my God, you're the guy from The Voice. So if anything, man, it's really just a huge appreciation, man. That's what it is. More than it being, oh, I'm the man or I'm something now. That never really occurs to me. It's just, I'm just appreciative, man. It's just what it is.
Yeah. And a lot of people will see it and sometimes people call this like an overnight success, but in reality, it's from, you being a teenager until now. Right. People don't see all that work, how many hours and hundreds of thousands of hours put into the craft and making music.
And I think that's with anything. Overnight, no one wakes up one day, oh, I'm gonna start singing today. We always appreciate the glory of it all, but we never really invest in the story of it. There was hours even before this. And it's, like you and I were talking earlier, there were hours you put in with, different between when you first started doing podcasts to you doing it now. There's a lot of determination. There's a lot of ups, downs, failures, successes. So I think, that brings to your point. I think I found the answer why it didn't go to my head, because in some ways, it just affirms all of your work. And that in some ways you've earned this. And this was me sitting by the piano for hours when I was 9 and 10 years old in piano lessons and singing in choir since I was 3. So all of those things kind of culminated to a stage as grand as television and as media. And so for me, and I use this carefully, was I shocked? Not really. I knew that I did a good job, and I knew it was worth getting all of them. I know I'm a good singer. I know that I'm a skilled pianist. I knew those things already. And if anything, it just affirmed something for me, and it wasn't for anyone else. I didn't do it to impress people, because one of the interviewers was saying, well, do you want to impress them? No, I think I want to connect with them more than anything. In my mind, I went up there and I sang a simple song, and I think it connected with people even beyond how it sounded. But I think the intent behind it, because I was singing about my daughter, because I'm not in a relationship or anything. So it was about her. And I think that's what connected to people, is that I'm singing a song about my daughter, and I want to sing it well. I'm not going to go up here and scream and and there's nothing wrong with singing loud and high, but I sang as simplistically as I could. And I think it pierced the hearts of millions of people.
Yeah, in a world like we were talking about earlier, where everybody is kind of making noise.
Yeah.
Sometimes the only thing you can do to be heard is to actually
Yes.
cut away.
Yeah.
And just cut it to the core of what it is.
And I think that wins every time. I mean, I think our first form of entertainment was always the storyteller, right? It wasn't a lot. People sat around. It was one person. That's why comedians can sell out Madison Square Garden. It's one person on stage. I don't see how people don't see that in comparison. I mean, it's nothing wrong with a good concert and lights and lasers and dancers and this and that. It's nothing wrong, but it all gets down to one person with a talent. I mean, look at Ed Sheeran, sits up there, he's the only person on stage selling out arenas. And it's really about stripping away what's not necessary. And it's a pure voice and a pure instrument, and you'll always be successful.
In a lot of ways, I imagine, doing the voice and kind of getting that feedback and starting to make an impact is a lot like finishing a marathon, where you there's almost a sense of relief, like, oh, like it was hard, but I got here and I finished. Mm-hmm. But then only to find out that there's that's the beginning of the next marathon. Like you're just about to start another one.
Yes.
Because in so many ways, your journey is just beginning.
Oh, absolutely.
So as an artist, 2018, like how do you see yourself pushing forward and continuing to create music and a craft and continue to do this for a living?
Yeah, well, anything due to the show is a springboard, and now the demand is more than it's ever been, because now you have the eyes and ears of millions of people who want more than anything for you to just put music out. So now there's the real pressure, because you've impressed us, and that's fine and that's great, but now what are you going to do? And so if anything, it's the motivator for me to get in the studio, which I am doing currently, and making the best music that I know how, because now the responsibility has grown significantly and I don't have a choice. Like we were saying before, I can't just say, oh, the voice was great, I nailed it, and I'm out. That's not an option. Now I have to be that much more determined to put out the best music and art and product that I can. So for me, that means getting with an agent and trying to stay in the faces of the people and heightening my social media, staying connected, because now that I'm not on the show, I've gotten more followers not being on it now, because people want to stay connected. They want to stay involved. Let us know what you're doing. Can you come to our country? Can you come here and sing? Can you come here and do that? So I have a responsibility to stay holistically healthy, musically, personally, artistically. I have to maintain this so I can do this for as long as I can.
What would you say your main focus is, right? Talk about like simplicity, where there's a lot going on and there's a lot that you could potentially do.
Yeah.
But if you were to say, all right, like this right here, is it creating an album? Is it like, or is it creating content online? What's like the main focus for you?
I think the main focus now is creating an album and also content, because content is kind of the supplement for the album to be put out. So I'm working on an EP now. It'll be about 5 or 6 songs. And I think it'll be just kind of broken down, just going back to what people loved about me. Possibly just me, piano, maybe a string quartet or something like that. And just singing just pure songs to bring back that sense of being okay with being quiet and being okay with being kind of relaxed. And it's not a lot of things that are unnecessary. It's just me and a voice, and that's what won the hearts of people. So why would I divert from that and do anything other than what people want me to do? And even sharing that with you now has affirmed and solidified what I know I should do, because that's what people want. They want someone with a voice and pure music, and that's in love songs. That's just what it is. So that's what's most pivotal now, in addition to keeping content going to keep people interested, because there's a lot of things that draw our attention. So I just want people to just stay focused on me a little bit.
No, I'm right there with you. And it can be challenging to find ways to continue to create that content. The one thing that I learned recently from Tyler Babin, who makes videos for Gary Vaynerchuk. I don't know if you know Gary V. He's like an entrepreneur, and he used to do like this wine library show online, and then he just like kind of took off in terms of entrepreneurship and motivational speaking. He's written like 3 or 4 books. But I kind of take some lessons from that, where it's about creating content pillars, or really like 1 or 2 things that you focus on. Like this podcast for me is like my main piece of content that I create. I do some additional like small YouTube videos, but this is like it. And then I can break out these excerpts into smaller little pieces.
Yeah.
I don't know what that means for a musician. Like, I don't know in what ways you could create additional content. Like, what does your content look like right now? Is it a lot of photos and just kind of staying in touch and like little stories and ideas?
Yeah. I mean, that's exactly what it is. It's a lot of photos and little musical kind of tidbits and musical appetizers, if you will, because you only get a minute on Instagram, which is my main kind of platform now. It's where I'm mostly engaged. And so yeah, I too can create an entire song and just give you 30 seconds of it, and it kind of makes people, it went off. You know, I don't know if you've ever had like a really dope hip hop album, and there would be a beat that's just like, oh my God, but it's like 30 seconds, and you're like,
yeah, was that not a full song?
Yeah, how's it not a full? Dilla was hugely famous for doing that, and it's like 30 seconds of, oh my God, that's amazing. And so I do that as well. I will post me doing a cover song and me doing an interpretation of a cover song for 30 to 40 seconds, and people are just like, oh my God, that was amazing. So we can't wait for you to do this. So that's what my content is. It's pictures and words of affirmation and motivation and things like that, and telling them about shows that I have coming up. But mostly people just want to see your face. They just want to feel connected to you. They want to feel involved. And I think that's what social media is. And that's what my content is.
Speaking of social media and Instagram, I did pull some questions from Instagram for you.
Oh, sweet.
So I have some questions here.
Oh, that's awesome.
About aspiring artists.
Okay.
I've got Alex Simpson. He's a vocalist from Quebec.
Wow.
Do you have a morning routine, and how do you find balance with a changing schedule? This is something we talked about a little bit, where it's kind of tough as an artist, especially if you're traveling quite a bit.
Yeah.
Do you have a morning routine here while you're in LA, and how does that change as you travel?
Not necessarily. I'm such an anomaly, man. No, not really. Mostly mornings for me are just a cup of coffee and checking emails and checking scheduling and checking social media and that's pretty much it. It's not a lot. I wish I had more things to say, but no, for me, I just check messages and try to schedule out what I'm going to do for the day, things I should be working on, calls that I mostly forget to make. I'm trying to get better at.
Yeah. And how about when you're on the road? Does that how do you keep your sanity when you're traveling?
Mostly, man, over the past 10 years, I've been on quite a bit of a like spiritual journey about, the meaning of all things and staying in a quiet kind of place and staying calm, and a lot of calm music, a lot of study on spiritual matters. And I think those things have kind of made me into the really kind of Zen person that I am. I'm mostly always this way. I mean, I do like they, when I get around friends, we get loud and get
hyped
fun
up.
Yeah, we turn up a little bit. But mostly, man, I just try to stay quiet. I'm a really kind of relaxed person. So it's a lot of music, a lot of reading, a lot of calming activities, prayer, meditation, and stuff like that. And I think that's helped me to maintain this.
What else we got here? George Fenn. Did people ever doubt you, even those that are close to you, like family, or were they supportive of your ambition?
Yeah, my family has been invaluably supportive. I think the only question early on was, how are you going to make a living out of this? I went to school. I did 2 years at a university, but then I dropped out. And of course, my parents were livid about that. But I just wanted to do music, and that's all. But even in that, they say, well, if this is what you're going to do, you better do exactly what you need to do. So my family has been, even in assisting with raising my daughter, both my parents were and remain two of my biggest advocates. And it's a treat for them to come out to LA and to be on TV, because now they're celebrities at work because we saw you on TV.
Yeah.
So
that's cool.
And my family has been completely 100% supportive.
Peter has a question specifically about the craft. When you're creating original music, do you create like the music and the melody first, or
Yes.
are you making the lyrics first?
Yeah, I'm much more of a composer than I am a lyricist, to be completely honest. So it's always the music, and I'll hum a melody, and then the words, either I write them or I have a writing partner who's leaps and bounds better than me at writing. But yeah, it's always the music and the melody first, always.
Josh Berry from Phoenix. I'm trying to build a network of musicians I respect. What tips do you have to provide value to other? What tips do you have for me to provide value to other musicians, producers in the industry? Should I volunteer as a roadie, helping set up gear? Any thoughts? Like, how do you build connections in the music industry when you're just getting started out?
For me, I would say find the local venues where musicians are, and just go and hang out. That's really kind of how I did it. Well, growing up in church, you kind of get an advantage because you meet other church musicians, and you form groups, and you form kind of a community around musicians. So I would say go to venues and go to shows and just speak to them and say, hey man, I'm working on this and that. Because I think there's a musician community in this country that's really kind of small. A lot of the same people are called for gigs, and a lot of people get gigs on the word or on the suggestion, on the recommendation rather of someone else. So I would say just hang where musicians are. A lot of musicians after the gig are probably hanging at the bar, just spark up a conversation. And now with social media, you have the greatest musicians in the world at your fingertips. Send them a message, say, hey man, this is what because people do it to me all the time. This is what I'm working on. We should collab. Do you have a moment? Do you have any tips? Just like he reached out to me, I think he can reach out to a lot of other musicians as well, or tag them. And if he puts up a video of him playing whatever the instrument is or singing, you can tag these people, tag some of the people that you admire, say, hey man, I would love to collab, and build from there.
What stands out to you when somebody would send you a DM? You get tons of these coming in. it's kind of hard to filter through, and like you obviously can't see all of them or can't click all of them. But so what's going to stand out to you when you're like just scrolling through your DMs?
What stands out? When they're actually performing something. And you're right, it's a lot. So I hope people, don't charge it to my heart that I don't, because in some ways it's kind of impossible to do that. And I know I'm so grateful for everyone that takes the time to say something nice or to reach out or to send a comment, because people don't have to say anything to you. Mm-hmm. And for everyone listening, please know that I appreciate you all. Whether I can respond to you individually, please know that I in some way probably have seen it or, try to find the time to see it. But what sticks out is when people are actually doing something musically. And even when people send messages just asking, how are things? I would say about 85% of the time I do write back. Mm-hmm. So I'm just grateful that people reach out, period. I'm not one of those artists that are untouchable or feel like I don't have time for you. I'm never that guy. If you go through my Instagram now, 90% of the time I respond to every single person. Just whether it's a thank you or whether it's I appreciate or whether it's
like an emoji.
Thank you emoji. The praying hands is my favorite one.
Yeah, me too. That's like the best one.
So whether it's that, you can go through and see that I try my best because I'm so grateful for it.
If we step back from, say, that aspiring musician, that aspiring artist, before they even send out that DM, what can they do, or what should they be focusing on if they want to make things happen?
I would say just on the craft. I would say trust yourself. I would say, practice and play as much as you can, listen to as much as you can, so that by that you can draw from everything that you've heard, because it's kind of hard to play what you haven't heard before. And so listen to other people that you admire. I would say listen to everything, because I try to draw from a lot of different musical aspects in order to make, and I put that all into every song that I make. I'll pull from my classical background, I'll pull from my gospel background, or funk, or R&B, or soul, or jazz,
or the Weather Channel,
or the weather. Well, so I can speak more eloquently. But yeah, I would say just stay at it and be fearless with it and believe in it, and post videos of you and put stuff online so more people can see you, and just be uncompromising. I don't think it's really, really hard. I think if you're dedicated, things will come to your aid. That's what I believe. If your intention is sound, things will work out for you. I mean, I think that's the best advice that I could give. I mean, it happened for me. I mean, I don't think that I'm more special than anyone else. I think that I was just determined and I wanted to do it, and I set my focus on it, and I made it happen.
Awesome, man. Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Absolutely,
I really appreciate you being
pleasure.
here. This has been an awesome conversation. I think it's going to help a lot of people. If people want to connect with you online, if they want to find you, where should they go?
If it's Instagram is where I'm mostly visible, and it's A Friend to the World, all one word, A Friend to the World. And my website is terrencecunningham.com. If you want to reach out, there's an option to connect with me and to contact me. I have a couple of videos on YouTube, which is a bit.ly site. So it's bit.ly/Terrence Vids. And also all of my videos from the show, from being on The Voice, are on NBC.com and on YouTube. And as simple as it is, probably the easiest way just to Google my name, mm-hmm. and all of the articles and stuff come up. And I have a book that I was published a couple of years ago, and I have an ebook out on Amazon, which is called Just In Case, available on Kindle. So check that out as well. And
what's the book about?
It's really the combination of what you and I have been talking about here, man. Is that just believing in yourself, and it's really a daily reminder that wherever you are in your life, you're doing all right. And just one of my favorite lines that I wrote in the book was, "It's never our responsibility to remind others of our worth. Our only responsibility is to remind ourselves." And so it's really a book full of just daily, just affirmations, like you're special, and you should know it, and don't dwell on lack in your life, and only dwell on what's positive about yourself. And it's really just layman's terms, it's I think someone said it's a new age chicken soup for the soul, for our generation. That's what I think it is. So again, it's called Just In Case. So check that out.
Great. All right, man. Thank you again for doing this.
Absolutely. My pleasure, man.
And that's the podcast. Thank you guys so much for listening. Check out Terrence's stuff. He's so good. If you haven't heard his music, if you haven't heard him perform, do yourself a favor and go check him out. You can see his stuff on Instagram. He has some videos on YouTube as well. Just YouTube his name, Terrence Cunningham, and you'll see some pretty cool stuff from The Voice. And I'm excited to see where he's going to take his career next. I know he's going to be onto some pretty awesome things. So that's the podcast. I'll see you guys next week.